Hello and welcome to the ScrapbookPal's YouTube channel. I'm Jill of Jill Cameron Creations and I'm going to be your host today. I'm making 3 different cards and I'm using the Colorado Craft Company's Family Love stamp set and the coordinating die set. The first card we're going to make is going to be a Copic colored landscape card. The second card I'm going to do a little bit of watercoloring, and the third card I'm going to color in pencil. Let's get started on our first card. I'm stamping the largest image in the stamp set, which is these adorable mice on this patchwork couch. I'm stamping on Nina Solar White 80-pound cardstock, and I'm using Lawn Fawn Jet Black ink. I stamped it twice. I'm going to color this with Copic markers, and all of the colors you'll see on the screen here from the caps. I'm using very earthy tones and warm grays and also some cool grays. And I'm keeping my coloring very simple. I'm doing some simple outlines and putting in the darker colors just where there'd be a little bit of a shadow, and then placing a second lighter color in to fill in my mouse. I'm not doing anything complicated, not adding texture. I just want to have a cute little family scene, and then I'm going to contrast that with a pretty aqua and turquoise with a little bitty pops of yellow in there. Once I'm finished coloring, I'm going to pop this back in my Misty, and I'm going to stamp my panel again so I have that rich dark black outline. I left my stamp in my Misty stamping platform so that I could go back and do that after I finished coloring. Make 100% sure that when you put a colored panel like this back in your Misty to stamp it a second or third time after you have finished coloring, that you put it in the exact same place. Make sure it's nice and snug in that same exact corner, because you don't want to ruin your colored panel. I've done it many times not paying attention, or when I went to close the lid, the paper shifted just slightly. So just be careful when you're doing it and be snug in that corner. So I mixed and matched all of my warm colors that I had and the cool colors that I had, so that I have a various cornucopia of different colored mice piled up on the couch here. I'm going to also take an R21 and give them cheeks, and I'm going to put pink in their ears and pink dots on the bottoms of their feet, so they have little paw pads on their little micey feet. When you have the R21 and you are using this in a darker color, such as the E70 series, it's going to look like it's going to push back that color of that dark brown, and it kind of does. It washes it out just slightly, but you're not going to have that halo effect around it. It's going to blend back when it dries. So it all blends together. You can see right here, you can barely see any of the cheeks on any of the mice, because the alcohol has evaporated, the color has deposited on the paper, and it's all blended together. When you're actually looking at the card, it is so cute. You just see these subtle little cheeks and the subtle little ears. Now I'm going to do a contrasting color here against all of that neutral color, and I am doing BG colors. They are BG 72 and BG 70, which is actually a pretty drastic difference in the values of those two colors. So I have a pretty dark BG color here, that muted kind of turquoise, and then the 70 is almost non-existent. It kind of looks like you're looking through a sheet of glass when you put it down. It just has that hint of color to it. The good thing about these two colors and how they work together, they blend each other out just enough that it gives that overall appearance of teal and the shadows of where they're setting, which is what you want. If you wanted to have that mid-tone for this, then you could take your lighter color and do a tip-to-tip connection and color with it that way. You could scribble off the darker color on a piece of acetate and pick it up with the nib of the 70 marker. You could do a custom blend and blend those two colors together in a different marker and have a mid-tone that way, however, whatever your mid-tone you wanted it to be. And you would do that with refills and a nib. You can definitely do that with Copic markers and come up with your own color if you want to. And ScrapbookPal, of course, has all of your Copic markers and refills and nibs and all of that kind of stuff that you need. And it's where I get mine. They run great sales on them too. I wasn't exactly sure what color I wanted to go on the pillows and on the patchwork areas on my couch. I didn't want something that was going to overpower my mice, but I wanted something that was kind of going to go with them, but not with them, you know what I mean? And I wanted something that was going to be on the opposite side of the color wheel for the teal color. So I went with an orange, and I did YR24 and YR21. And it was a little too bold as I filled it in and colored it. I thought it kind of overtook my mice. It drew the eye too much to them. So I took the Y00 marker and it blended them out just enough that it looked like it faded back into the couch. Like the patches were old and the pillows were old, which is what I really, really wanted for those couch. Now I'm going to set that panel aside and I'm going to pull out a piece of watercolor paper and we're going to stamp this in pigment black ink. I am using VersaFine Onyx black ink, and we're going to stamp that. And I used my anti-static powder tool, and I'm going to stamp this twice because we are stamping on textured watercolor paper. And then I'm going to use black embossing powder. Some people are terrified of black embossing powder. I know when I first started doing embossing, I was terrified of this stuff because it seemed like it got everywhere. I did not know about anti-static powder tools at that time though. So I use black embossing powder. If I'm going to do a black outline of any description, I use that black embossing powder. I think it's one of those products that you need to have in your crafty stash along with a good detail white embossing powder. Black embossing powder is a must as well. It gives amazing, amazing crisp results, especially for watercolor for something like this. Now we're going to keep this really simple, and I'm going to be using Zig Clean Color Real Brush markers, and I'm just using a handful of colors. My camera cut off when I thought it was running, and I did catch it before I got too far into this, so you missed me doing the first little kitty there, which is absolutely fine. All I'm doing is dropping in some different colors here and mixing the colors together. I'm not worried about detail on the cats. I want to give that illusion, that loose illusion that these cats have some different markings on them, and of course kitties are going to have way different markings on them. We have office cats and that are outside in downtown where I work, and we just have a litter of kittens, and all of those kitty cats look so different from the mama cat and the daddy cat, and it's absolutely interesting to see all of that. So I'm just dropping in color and taking a water brush marker pen and lightly adding water to these areas and mushing all the color together. It gives the illusion that there's markings with different colors and such without having to put in those details, which is absolutely fine. Well, I'm going to set this aside to dry when I'm done, which doesn't take very long because we're not using a great big huge pile of water on this. And I'm also going to cut this out with a coordinating die when we're done. The board that I'm using is actually a kitchen cutting board, and I picked that up at a local store, and it's great for watercoloring because it has a handle on it, and if it's a watercolor panel that has a lot of water, I can tape that panel down and then I can pick it up and set it to the side and let it dry. I don't have to keep it on my workspace. Whereas if I didn't have this on this hardboard, then it would be all up in my way, and that's just not good because I do way too many projects all at once to have that thing up in my way. So I'm able to pick that up and set it aside. I also use it to do heat embossing a whole lot if it's a full panel, and that protects my work surface and my craft mat. I'll pull my cutting board out, put it down, put the panel down that has a ton of embossing on it, and heat directly on it so that it doesn't warp my cutting mat there. Of course, you can't forget the cheeks. I'm using the same muted teal kinds of colors, and I'm also going to drop in a little bit of the orangey color in the background for that card. I'm keeping the color palette on these pretty much the same across the board, and using the same browns and grays with the teal and the orange because I really liked it. But I also wanted you to see that there's way different ways that you can use all of these little kitty cats and all of these images and make really different looking cards, but at the same time use the same color palettes for them. You can use a lot of different mediums on these, and I really thought that all of these cards are super cute. This one is going to be a tiny card. It's going to be one of those cards that I would just like drop on mom's desk as I walked by in the morning. I work with my mom at an office part-time, and I would drop this on her desk in the morning just to say, oh hey mom, I love you. And it's one of those itty bitty little cards of, you know, that you could use anytime for a thanking of you or a thank you or anything like that for a friend. Just super cute, super simple, and we'll get to that in just a second. And I'm just dropping in color here and there, and I'm not fussing about the patterns for the kitty cats. I don't want them to necessarily, quote, look like something. I'm just adding some color in here and there, and, you know, in the darker areas. I actually added the red over top of it, and this was kind of in honor of one of the cats at the office. She has this really weird color to her. She's not really a gray cat. She's not really a brown cat. In some light, she looks kind of shiny red, and it's really weird. So that's what I kind of did for her. She's this weird color, and it's really pretty. To blend all of this together, I used a 10% French gray out of the Prisma line of colors. If you've never broken apart dies before, here's a really easy tip for you. These are jewelry snips. And I literally just cut the edges off of them into a cloth and then dump the cloth over in the trash. You can break them apart, but I don't like them to have the little burrs on the sides of them because I end up sticking my fingers in them, and yeah, that's not fun. I'm using the coordinating dies. To hold my dies down, I do use a little piece of washi tape and run them through my die cutting machine. I've noticed that cardstock layer panels are making a comeback. And when I first started making cards, it was super, super popular, and I'm so glad that it's back because it is so easy to do and make an outstanding card. Using those paper layers is just so easy. I took all 3 panels down. I'm using a white card base, and I am layering my cardstock, and I took everything down so that it had 1/8 of an inch all the way around in between all of my layers. That means that I needed to cut 1/4 of an inch off of 2 sides of my cardstock panels if you started with 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 inch panels. Easy peasy lemon squeezy. I'm going to layer everything together. Just use a little bit of Nuvo Deluxe liquid adhesive and center that up. And I did use that Marigold ink color by Pinkfresh Studios. It's in a 4-pack of the mini ink cubes, so you have that range of different yellows. And then I'm going to use a piece of aqua cardstock and a piece of black cardstock and layer those together with white on top and put my couch in the middle. I'm not putting the sentiment on the front of this card because I really, really loved how this scene just kind of stood for itself, and I'm going to add some little iridescent hearts at the end here. I'm going to pop my couch up with a little bit of foam tape, and our sentiment is going to go on the inside of our card. There's 3 different sentiments on the stamp set, and 2 of them have the coordinating die to cut them out, and the largest one does not, and that's the one that we're going to use here. It's just 3 different lines, and it is so stinking cute. And I'm going to put this on the inside of my card. And to get a sentiment that is straight, I use my eye, but I also line this up on the craft mat on the grid there. For our second cards, we've already die cut everything out. I stamped the sentiment on white cardstock in black ink, and now I'm going to run through a couple of different of these fancy ovals by Spellbinders, which is available over in the shop. And this is probably one of my favorite die sets to use for ovals because it's different ovals. It's not just the scalloped ones with the dot. There's one that has that fluted edge to it that doesn't actually, it's just a plain oval and it doesn't actually cut out any edging on it, and they alternate that way, which is something I really like. I used a little bit darker teal cardstock for this one because I don't have a ton of teal on my kitties. I just have the little bit that's on their bow ties on their back right there. So I didn't use a whole lot of it, but I am going to put that gold color in the very, very background. I didn't want to put it on the inside oval because I didn't like it. I just didn't want to do that. I wanted to put this in the background so it looked like it was holding everything. And I think the orangey color there just kind of gave it an overall warm feeling. I think ovals are probably the most difficult thing to make sure that they're straight ever. I don't feel like I can make an oval straight on a panel for anything. It just always seems like it's crooked to me. Oh my goodness. And I have to laugh at myself every time I do it. So I that's one of them I have to pick up and look at and go, is it right? I don't think so. Alright, so we put a little bit glue on the back of all of our layers here, and we're going to pop up our sentiment for this, not our image. We're going to pop up our sentiment on the front of this panel. If you have any tips and tricks on how to align a oval on your card panel, I would love to hear it. Share that with us down in the comments. I struggle with it constantly because I feel like they are always crooked no matter what I do. So share that with us down in the comments below. And pop that sentiment on the front of our card, and that one's done. For our last card, I'm taking a 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 inch cardstock panel, and I'm going to score that at 2 3/4, and then I'm going to add a little bit of ink blending to the front of it, and you'll see how I kind of work through how I'm going to create this little card. I knew I wanted this tiny little card, and I was going to use the scraps. I'm using the scraps from the first card that we made, but I didn't know exactly how I wanted it to be on there. And I like for you to see my thought process and how I work through things. I'm a very visual person, so I need to see how it's going to all lay out. One thing I do is I will tape down my card bases to my work surface so that it doesn't pop up and things don't move around on me as I'm working through them. This helps me a whole lot to make sure that things are straight and in place, because I have that folded edge of my card base up against a line on my cutting mat, and that way nothing's crooked. Now I'm going to align all of this together, and I'm just going to glue all these. I decided to go with the traditional stripe across the bottom and minimize the black and just make sure that it's peeking through, just to give it a little bit of that classy look there. And then we're going to pop up our kitties, and I'm going to stamp and die cut our sentiment, and that's going to be our 3 cards for today. So this is one stamp and die set that you can get, of course, over in the shop, and check these out. Super, super, super cute miceys and kitties together, and create that family little card for you. I thank you so much for joining me today. I hope y'all head over to the shop, check out some things and the newest products available, and y'all have an amazing day. All 3 cards are pictured at the end here, and you can check that out. And if you have any questions or anything, definitely reach out and I'll be happy to answer them. Y'all have an amazing day. Oh, don't forget to hit the subscribe button for the ScrapbookPal YouTube channel so that you see all of the amazing creations by our design team for ScrapbookPal.com. And also over on the blog, we have a totally different design team that has amazing creations over there as well. Thanks so much. Y'all have a great day.